Chapter 8. Programmed Dreams. By Professor Clancy D. McKenzie, M.D. Programmed dreams offer a breakthrough in medical and psychiatric diagnosis and treatment. I first learned the technique from the Silva training in September 1969, and I have been using it ever since. You may have heard about problems being solved or discoveries being made during sleep or during the dream state. These are mostly sporadic events, in which people just happen to awaken with a bright idea. The programmed dream is different. It gives us the ability to awaken with that bright idea or solution to a problem any night, at will. You do not have to be a yogi and meditate for 50 years in a cave to achieve enlightenment. You reach just as deep a level of consciousness when you fall asleep, but you are unaware of this state and how to use it. Utilizing the Silva techniques, you will be able to spend 1 minute prior to going to bed to formulate a question, and 1 minute when you awaken to retrieve the answer. There are 2 techniques I use, and more are taught in the Silva training program. The first is to decide to have a dream about a problem, and decide that the interpretation of the dream will reveal the answer. You must also decide to awaken at the very end of the dream, remember it, and write it down. The second technique is to decide that the mind will work on a particular problem throughout sleep, and that when you awaken, your first thought will be the answer. I will focus mainly on examples so you will begin to grasp the magnitude of what programmed dreams enable us to do. Programmed dreams are very valuable and are well worth the effort to learn. One of my hospitalized patients, for example, suddenly developed excruciating chest and abdominal pain. The internal medicine specialist thought it might be either a heart attack or a kidney infection. He suggested transferring her to a medical facility. After persuading him to wait until morning, I told the patient, who was a good dreamer, that she had better have a dream that would tell her exactly what it was, where it was, how she got it, why she got it, and exactly what to do. She also programmed that I would be able to interpret the dream for her, and oddly enough, I immediately knew the interpretation even though it was highly complex. It is possible that I understood because that is what she programmed. In her dream, she and her husband were driving along a winding road where they should not have gone when it began to snow. The snow got deeper and deeper, the car veered off the road, and it was covered over with snow. Just beyond where the car went off the road came to a dead end and went into another road at right angles, then into another road at right angles, and then into still another road at right angles. To me, this was an anatomical roadmap of the intestinal tract, with an obstruction at the ileocecal junction. But I didn't tell her this. Instead, I asked her to draw the roadmap for me. She did, and it even was in correct proportion. The winding road corresponded to the small intestine and the dead end to the cecum. The 3 right angles were the ascending, transverse, and descending colon. As soon as the car was covered with snow, her husband said, "I have to cut off the engine." The first thing one does for an intestinal obstruction is shut off the fuel supply, the food intake. Then 8 or 10 people came from the city to dig them out. 8 or 10 in dreams represents the fingers on 2 hands, and I did not know if this meant laying on of hands or surgery. When they were dug out, she and her husband were all right, but their 3 teenage children were gone. They were the reason for the obstruction. She wanted more of her husband's attention for herself. Intestinal obstruction is an acute surgical emergency, so I immediately transferred her to a surgical hospital. Before she left, I warned her that she needed to have a dream to overcome the obstruction or she'd need surgery. At the surgical hospital, the diagnosis was confirmed, based on X-ray findings of fluid levels in the gut and blood electrolyte studies. Surgery was scheduled, and she took a nap to program another dream. In this dream, she saw a tall dark man, wearing a turban as if from the Punjab section of northern India, and he was massaging her abdomen. When she awakened, the obstruction was gone. To the non-dream programmer, these 2 dreams must sound like something out of Alice in Wonderland. But I am only reporting data, and I draw no conclusions about the data. I further learned that 20 years earlier a surgeon had performed an operation on this woman for intestinal obstruction. I called the surgeon and asked where in the intestinal tract was the obstruction. He answered that it was the distal portion of the ileum. The ileocecal junction is the distal-most part of the ileum. Solving problems with programmed dreams. Programmed dreams can be used to solve any kind of problem, such as problems at work, with children, financial troubles, decisions about whether to get married and other momentous decisions, and so forth. I will stick primarily to medical examples in this brief chapter, and you can learn other applications during the Silva training. Let me start with one of my own. One time I wrote a very strong letter to a patient who was taking too much Valium. 2 nights later during sleep I became aware that she was so infuriated by my letter that she decided to not come back. Then, during sleep, I realized that both of us were at the most telepathic state of consciousness, so I pictured her coming in the next day. When she arrived she said to me, "When I got your letter yesterday I was so peeved that I decided I would never come back. But when I woke up this morning I changed my mind." Of course, she thought that she changed her mind, but really it was me who put the thought there. When you program long enough for dreams, the mind becomes aware that you want to gather information during sleep, and it automatically does this for you. The information reaches beyond the dreamer, and beyond information that you would presume is contained in the mind. One time a dear friend complained about a heart condition that kept recurring. He had balloon dilation of the coronary arteries and also had a splint inserted in an artery, but still he experienced difficulty. I told him about programmed dreams, gave him a set of the dream tapes to hear, and instructed him to wake up with the answer. 2 days later I received a call from him. He was at the University of Pennsylvania Medical Center, saying that he had the dream and was told to get it over with. So he went in for quadruple bypass surgery. I assured him he would not have received the answer if the operation were going to fail, because I had never known a programmed dream to be wrong. The next night I visited him and learned the surgery already had been completed that morning. During sleep that night, I received a clear message. He was up and running around in my dream, and suddenly one of the arteries burst. The words I heard were "too soon." I knew this was a warning, not that it was going to happen, but that it would happen if he became active too soon. I cancelled half a day's worth of appointments to go see him and explain the dream. I explained to him that his arteries were made of very delicate 75-year-old tissue, and that he must not get up and rush around too soon even if his doctors told him it would hasten recovery. His wife and son were there and agreed completely that it would be just like him to be up and dancing practically the next day. It is 5 years later, and he is alive and well. I didn't program for the dream and I did not program to awaken with it, and I do not know how it came about, but I was thankful for it.